Jason, we talked about this on yesterday's show, that the Browns are at least willing to listen to trade offers for DTR. That was from Zach Jackson of The Athletic. Yeah. It was our number one most viewed clip yesterday. It blew up. Nearly 20,000 views on that clip alone on Twitter. The DTR trade talk, even on Twitter, exploded like wildfire. And I think it's worth mentioning before we dive into the actual question of this topic. It's every GM, and this includes Andrew Berry, it's their job to listen if some team wants to call and offer them a trade. Like, it's GM malpractice not to at least see what's out there for any kind of player, right, Earl? And if a team wants to call the Browns about DTR, it'd be silly for Andrew Berry not to answer the phone. None of us yesterday were saying, hey, we should trade DTR. We were all just saying if the right deal comes across, you'd be silly not to listen. So I just want to make sure that is on the record and clear because all three of us talked about it yesterday. The question today, though, is, Jason, and I'll start with you. We'll go Earl next. If you had to win one game in 2024, this season, and your two choices to play quarterback were DTR or Tyler Huntley, the two quarterbacks the Browns are believably choosing between for their quarterback 3 spot, who do you think gives the Browns the best chance to win one game this year, Huntley or DTR?
This makes me be a hypocrite, and I don't like doing that. But if I had to pick one game to win right now, I would probably take Tyler Huntley. But I still like DTR. In a long-term view, in the overall quarterback ability, I still like DTR. Huntley obviously has more experience, though. He's been around a little bit more. I somehow made a Pro Bowl. I still don't understand how that happened. I seriously, that just totally baffles me. But he's a veteran who knows different systems, who has had success in different systems. So I guess you would lean him. But I really like DTR. And I don't want to turn this into an Austin Watkins type thing of how can you do this to Austin Watkins? You have to find a place on this team for Austin Watkins, which was somehow became a thing toward the end of last year. I don't want to make it that. He's a young quarterback. Earl's putting his hand up.
Guilty. Guilty.
I really wasn't calling you out. It wasn't just you.
No,
There's a lot of people that felt that way.
It's okay.
And I don't want to turn it into that, but I do really like him long term. And I just think that we've seen enough glimpses to know, listen, he was a 5th-round quarterback. He's a project. You know that going in. But he hasn't done anything to me to make you say it's time to give up and move on from him other than some of the injury concerns. So, and if you're playing the year-to-year game and this is your 3rd quarterback, I can see why I guess they would side with Tyler Huntley, but I'm with Bernie. We had Bernie in yesterday, and Bernie was really high on Dorian, and I kind of am as well. So, if this comes to pass and they wind up moving him for kind of a mid-round to late-round pick that's not a ton of value, and I don't think you're going to get more than that for him, I'm going to be disappointed. So it's kind of a conflicted answer.
Yeah, I mean, in the words of G. Bush, DTR. Listen, I hear what Jason's saying, and when we was talking about this, I thought about it. Like, Huntley, for whatever reason, God knows how, made it to the Pro Bowl. And when you seen him play in those spot starts in Baltimore when Lamar was hurt, you see him be able to make the ball, score some touchdowns, and move the ball, score some touchdowns, and make some plays. But at the end of the day, when you just take away the experience, I mean, DTR is just a better football player, and we've seen DTR kind of grow up in front of our face. In my opinion, before he got hurt, he just plays with a certain confidence and swag when he knows exactly what he's doing. He has a strong arm. He seems to be able to make some right decisions more often than not. Like, this dude, 5th round pick, but he has a lot of potential. And he's played a lot of football in a pro-style offense. And I got to roll with that. I got to roll with the youth that's a better player out over the experience. I just think he's better than him. So
we got one answer for DTR. We got one answer for Huntley, which means
grudgingly for Huntley.
I'm going to be the tiebreaker. And we got to poll up in this, and we'll read the results at the end. I bet you would say 85% of the chat is going to say DTR. And if the question was for half a season, who would you rather have fill in for half a season? I would take DTR. I would. And I like DTR. I think he has a chance to be a decade-long, solid, legitimate backup quarterback based on his arm strength, his athleticism. He seems to kind of get a good grasp of an offense in a pretty quick time span. But for one game in 2024 this year, I think I have to roll with Huntley. And I went back and looked. I'm throwing the Baltimore game out the window last year. Like, I don't put any stock into that whatsoever.
Yeah.
Against Pittsburgh, they won that game 13-10. Mm-hmm. Do you remember his numbers from that game? I didn't, I'll be honest.
No, I remember thinking he played relatively decently. It was a low-scoring game, and I felt like he had a late drive.
He was
But
24.
I could be making all of that up.
No, he's right on, because I was going to say I don't remember the numbers. I remember he managed the game well. Like, he didn't blow it.
Yeah.
That's what I remember.
He was 24 of 43 for 165 yards, 1 interception, no touchdowns, and a 55 quarterback rating.
Not great.
Against Denver. Do you remember his stats against Denver?
No, but I remember the touchdown drive,
That
the throw.
Yep.
That throw.
And then he got knocked out.
And
So
then he
those
got
were both
knocked
his
out.
last 2 drives. They did almost nothing in the first half. His overall game stats, 14 of 29, so 47%
Awful.
completion percentage, 134 yards, 1 touchdown, no picks. There was a bunch of drops in that game, so the numbers look a little worse than they actually were. DTR's put up huge numbers in the preseason. When he's had a chance to play in the NFL in a regular season game, now granted, it's 2.5 games. The Baltimore game I put no real stock into. It hasn't matched the preseason hype of DTR. So for one game this year, just one game, I'm going to roll with Huntley because I think it's harder to confuse a guy who's played in more meaningful football games than DTR has at that level. And for stability, I take Huntley's stability and higher floor and lower ceiling for one game than I would take with DTR, who certainly has a higher ceiling, but also has a lower floor. If this was an 8-game sample and you said, hey, Deshaun, for whatever reason, isn't going to play the back half of the season, 8 games, who you taking? I'm rolling with DTR 100 out of 100 times. But for one game, I'd roll with Tyler Huntley.
You know what I just thought about when you mentioned that game and DTR had receivers dropping the ball? Like, what if, and this will never happen, like, but what if they can change how they count stats, right? Like, if, however the NFL defines a drop, like if a receiver drops a ball,
doesn't count as an
it
incompletion.
doesn't count as an incompletion against the quarterback. And so then when we have these arguments about Deshaun Watson and others, you know, it'd be straight, okay, completion, incompletion, or, well, this receiver dropped this many balls, et cetera.
Well, do you remember?
That's almost like earned run average in baseball. It doesn't count against
pretty
you.
much, yeah. Like,
Well, do you remember? I don't remember if it was Pittsburgh or Denver, but he threw a couple because he has a cannon.
Yeah.
And I remember the one to Njoku. It was against Pittsburgh. I'm seeing it in my head. It was a 5-yard stop, and he threw it like a 10,000-mile-an-hour fastball, and it counts as the drop because it hit him in the hand.
Yeah.
But objectively, that's an uncatchable. Do you remember the play I'm talking about?
I know exactly because I remember at the time thinking it was Scott Bakula in Necessary Roughness throwing. Remember, like, did you ever see that movie?
Yeah.
We threw it to Featherstone, and he couldn't catch, so he just rammed it right into his face mask.
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of what that throw looked like.
So-
I'm just going to ram it right into his face mask.
So not all drops are equal, but
Right.
I would like to see if the NFL could figure out catchable passes versus uncatchable passes and certain accuracy
because
for a little.
I
advanced
remember, like,
analytics.
when the Eagles played in the Super Bowl and McNabb threw that, like, 10-yard pass to T.O., and T.O. turned it into a long touchdown.
And he
And
gets
McNabb
credited
got credited for this long-ass touchdown.
70-yard
throw.
touchdown
When in
throw.
reality, you threw a 10-yard pass, T.O. did the rest.
Or a screen,
Yeah,
like,
something
or
like
a little
that,
jet
yeah.
sweep where you just pitch it forward.
It'd be
So,
cool if you could find a way to play with the stats like
Yeah.
that. It just when you said that, it made me think about that.
half a season, would you change your answer to DTR?
Yeah,
Right?
probably, yeah.
But for one game, or how close of a decision was it for you?
It's real close. I guess, like, I'm a little biased when it comes to DTR.
Yes,
right?
you got it. I know you
As-
like him.
I
yeah.
really like him as a player. I just think he's a great athlete and he's a highly intelligent quarterback. But, I mean, Huntley made a Pro Bowl, even though me and Jason still can't figure out how.
You weren't impressed with his 2 touchdown passes that season?
Yeah, right.
I'm pretty sure he had 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions that year.
Man.
If DTR and MJ Emerson were both drowning, which one are you saving?
Well, MJ would never drown, so that's an impossible question to ask.
I mean, I got 2 hands. I got to pull both my boys up.
Let me ask you all this. If it does come to a situation, we hope it doesn't, but if it does come to the situation where the Browns have to start either DTR or Huntley, how confident would you feel going into that game? Do you both give the Browns a chance to win?
Yeah.
Do you think a good enough shot to
You
win?
know why? I would, and this is no, like, hometown bias. The Cleveland Browns, led by Kevin Stefanski, just showed me so much, like, tenacity last year. It just showed me this will to, like, overcome adversity and to never quit. And I find it hard to believe that the Cleveland Browns are going to find themselves in that same situation to where you have to start 3 or 4 quarterbacks again. But if they did, you know, they already got a track record of showing, like, you know what, we built for this. We can overcome adversity. We hope it doesn't come down to that, but this team has clearly bought into Kevin Stefanski's leadership. They believe that overall as a unit, they're good enough to beat anybody with damn near anybody playing quarterback. And so, you know, I would be more confident in that situation this season than I was last year.
The reality is, if they had to start a game with either one of those guys, they would not be favored in any game except maybe, 5, 6 games, maybe. I'm trying to think of the bottom of the NFL. They're not going to be favored.
Their schedule is tough.
Yeah,
they're not going to be any gimmies.
Obviously, you're assuming that the quarterback on the other side is healthy. But if do they have a chance to win? Of course, it's the NFL. Everybody has a chance to win. Would I pick them to win? It'd be matchup based on that, and it'd be depend who the opponent is. But in terms of Vegas and lines, there's only a handful of teams that they would be favored against if those guys were starting.
I don't think they'd be favored. I'd feel good enough about both those guys giving the Browns a chance to win. There are a lot of backup and third-string quarterbacks in football where if they're starting, just chalk it up as an L.
I mean, we saw P.J. Walker beat the 49ers.
I was just about to say, I wish I knew, I could remember off the top of my head how big of an underdog we were going into that game.
The San Francisco game?
Yeah.
Oh, I know.
Somehow Mike lost a lot of money on that game.
It's your fault.
And he blames me.
It's your fault.
But, like, to your
fault.
point, I mean, you got to check the matchups, the weather. Like, there's so many different elements that goes into it. And plus, any given Sunday in the NFL is legit.
Yeah.
Like, anybody can get got any given week. Before we came down here, I was watching this video of Ronnie Brown the day that the Miami Dolphins debuted.
The 5 touchdowns? I saw that clip.
Yeah. And it was crazy because that was one of the years New England was really, really good. And they got that day. So it can happen.
Did you ever tell a story on the air? Are you allowed to tell a story?
No, we're not going to talk about that story.
Oh, all right.
No. Because it was not with our sponsor, Sportsbook. So we're not going to.
Oh, that part doesn't matter.
No, we'll save it for overtime. It's an overtime story.
All right.
And